Hi everybody, Richard Drummond here again, Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're doing another product walkthrough. This time it's Contend, and to tell us a little bit more about it is Mike. Hi Mike.
Hi there, Richard. Lovely to be here.
And first of all, before we get into the demo itself, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and the product.
Certainly. Like Richard said, my name is Mike. I'm one of the co-founders and I'm the CEO of Contend.legal. My background is in the legal services space, where I was at a variety of legal tech companies prior to founding this. And Contend is taking the latest developments in artificial intelligence and using it to help everyday people get access to justice. Millions of people can't afford legal help in its current form, and we're using AI to provide a fast and affordable alternative to going to a human lawyer, or in many cases, a supplement to going to a human lawyer in order to make justice as accessible as it should be.
Fantastic, fantastic, and much needed, much needed. Well, we're going to do a whole bunch of Q&A at the end, so I'll let you do the walkthrough, and if you'd like to take it away.
Certainly. Thank you, Richard. So what you're seeing here is an early version of the Contend website. We launched a prototype in the United Kingdom earlier this year, and what I'll take you through is a sample scenario that someone can run through if they're looking to get some basic legal advice. Essentially, if you are encountering any of a myriad of common legal issues, like you're potentially facing an eviction, potentially you believe you may have been terminated unfairly, or you may be facing discrimination at work, or a variety of other legal issues that normal people encounter but don't know what to do with, Contend is a wonderful starting point. By using a system like ours, you can get basic legal advice on your situation. You can potentially have it help you draft certain correspondences or certain letters if needed, or you can also use it to help you find a lawyer if necessary. So I'll take you through an example walkthrough of, let's say I hypothetically receive an eviction notice and going from there. So this is the early interface for Contend. There's a lot happening behind the scenes, but this will feel similar to a ChatGPT style experience. It's powered by large language models plus some other AI techniques to augment the legal accuracy of what you're seeing here. But if I simply start with, I think I'm being evicted. Contend is going to ask some clarifying questions about my situation. We've trained it to be very inquisitive in the same way that a human lawyer would be and get clarifying information about what it is that I'm encountering. So when did I get the eviction notice? Let's say I got it last week. There'll be some extended back and forth as it asks me more information about my situation in order to put together a set of facts that it's able to provide a diagnosis off of. Written and rent arrears. And of note, in the UK, there's obviously very specific legislation around what types of notices need to be provided, what the contents of those notices need to be. And Contend has been trained on all of that information. So large language models are already powerful out of the box, but obviously from a legal point of view, hallucinations and legal inaccuracies are a major concern. So myself plus my co-founder, who's a lawyer and software engineer, put a lot of effort into building out an accuracy testing framework to make sure that Contend has all of the rules it needs in order to make the right decisions. So let's say it's £2,000 over 2 months. And so it keeps asking questions as you keep moving further through the conversation. And again, I'm going to jump to a more developed conversation just so you can get a sense of what this looks like a little further along here. So if I jump to one where I've had more of a conversation, this is also connected to eviction law and eviction notices. Contend, after collecting all the information needed, is able to provide a basic diagnosis of your legal issue. It's able to tell you what steps you have or what avenues for recourse you have. So as an example here, Contend is able to tell you, okay, you have a Section 8 eviction notice. In this case, there were no reasons listed. Here are the steps you're able to take to get help. And following that, it's able to also draft you a letter that you're able to send to your landlord. Now, real people have used Contend for this exact use case. We had one woman who's based out of London who was a single mom. She was being evicted, and the housing council was unwilling to rehome her. We helped her get new housing without having to be on the streets by using our system. She was an immigrant from Eastern Europe. English was not her first language, and she used our system to help her get the right information and then make the right correspondences and actually get the help she needed in a timely fashion. The alternative, and she told us this, was she was going to be on the streets for 2 weeks before finding a new home. So as of right now, We have versions of Contend online that are free. We have some paid versions of Contend as well. The dream for this would be if we can find a way to monetize this without charging end users, we would love to do that because access to justice is critically important to us. But in summary, it's a very short ChatGPT style experience enhanced for legal accuracy. Millions of people need help, and a lot of people have already used this to get that help. So Richard, over to you. Would love to hear any questions you have.
Yeah, no, fantastic. It's very, very interesting. And it's we were talking before off camera about various waves of AI and automation. And obviously the very first real wave of legal AI, which triggered a lot of chatbots, which, let's be honest, were not great. Um, that was in sort of 2015, 2016. What you've done here, what's possible now is just light years away from, in terms of improvements. Um, just a couple of questions. So one, it's drafting a letter. Now obviously there's only three reserved activities as far as I remember in England and Wales, and this isn't one of them. However, would this be legal advice?
So within the UK, this would be legal advice. Now, legal advice would not fall under the reserved activities, and drafting a legal letter as defined by as defined by the reserved activities is not something we're actually doing. We can help with drafting emails or certain correspondences, but
Mhm.
this is legal advice, and it's a huge part of what motivated us to launch in the UK as a starting point. I'm, as you can potentially tell by my accent, from North America. And both Canada and many states in the US have much tougher regulation around the unauthorized practice of law and who can and cannot provide legal advice. UK
Yeah.
is far more forward thinking, and it's a huge part of why we launched in England and Wales as a starting point.
Gotcha, gotcha. And what about translation? So, for example, you mentioned this lady who was from Eastern Europe. Could she type in her questions in whichever language and not just get answers back in English? Could she get language answers in her own language, or is it? Not that you'd expect that necessarily. I'm just wondering if that is possible.
Terrific question. So the short answer is yes, with some caveats, where legal accuracy and making sure that the information is being translated correctly and conveying the correct information into another language is not something we can quality check as effectively. Both Will and I are native
Mm.
English speakers and fluent in English, and a lot of the steps we've taken to improve accuracy are English specific. However, if you prompt the system in another language, whether it's Slovak or Arabic, given the robustness of large language models and their multilingual capabilities, they are able to respond in the language in which they're prompted. However, there may be a hit on the AI accuracy side of things.
Gotcha. Which segues nicely to accuracy. So obviously, a lot of this, for example, a Section 8 notice, for example, is used when, now that's a fact, you're stating a fact, a legal fact. That's making reference to some type of data which has been
Mhm.
referred to. How are you sure that's accurate? Are you doing a RAG system? Or have you just done a thousand system prompts to refine it and refine it? How are you sure that that is a Section 8 notice? It's not a Section 9 notice, or in fact that a Section 8 notice actually exists.
Yeah, great question. So it's a
I wouldn't normally ask that, but after having seen a few things the last year or so, I've got to ask it.
Yeah, and it's a great question because it's
Mm,
especially important for this particular use case where we're not talking about lawyers or legal professionals who have a lot of experience using the system. We're talking about
mm.
everyday people who likely don't have any sort of formal legal training. So the accuracy is especially important because the risk for harm is really significant. So it's a combination of two things. Um, First, we're using a lot of system prompt level techniques, and we've tested that thoroughly with what we call our accuracy evaluation system. Essentially, it's a large database of different UK, specifically English and Welsh law, legal scenarios across a wide range of issues, and we test how the model performs on those. The responses are also supplemented by a knowledge base or a RAG system, retrieval augmented generation for listeners who aren't as familiar with it. So Contend is able to consult that system for more difficult answers. We're still in the process of building that out. It's a pretty, as AI people might know, pretty laborious and tech-intensive process to assemble a useful data set. But it's a mix of a very thorough accuracy testing framework just to make sure that the responses are as high quality and as consistently accurate as possible. And then B, using a RAG call out to a knowledge base for more challenging questions.
Gotcha, gotcha. And the back end, the LLM back end, this is GPT-4 or something similar?
It's actually a mix of different models, primarily from the OpenAI family, so GPT models. GPT-4 is the backbone. We use several
Mm.
other models for things like simplifying the language, where often what you get if you were to ask, let's say, GPT-4 out of the box, a legal question would be filled with a lot of unnecessarily complicated words or jargon that would be harder to parse for everyday people. So we're taking steps on our end to simplify that language down without actually diluting the legal accuracy or the legal content of the response.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's fascinating. And so where does this go next? You were talking about perhaps making it, sort of profit making. And, I think in the long run, I mean, that's always been one of the challenges. And, it's a conversation I've had many times with people in the access to justice space, which is that obviously, we want to provide access to justice. If the government isn't going to pay for it, how do we do it? So, and there's also an argument that a relatively small amount, £50 or $50 would
Mhm.
be, you might argue, a relatively small amount of money, which even someone who is under a lot of pressure could afford if the result, such as this letter that prevented them from being evicted, was effective. And they'd be like, well, that was a good 50 quid well spent.
Mhm.
And therefore that enables you to make money. Everybody's happy. It's a win-win. Other people might say, no, 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 it's got to be completely free, absolutely free. And if you're going to make money, you're going to have to find another way of doing it. I don't know. What's the answer?
So it's interesting to look at this question from a technology point of view because I think there's some precedent for organizations and companies stepping in from a non-tech point of view. You have really great organizations in the UK like Citizens Advice Bureau and other accessible legal help alternatives. But I think if the legal tech sector is honest with itself and looks at the amount of effort that's been put into B2B or business to business solutions versus B2C solutions, it's overwhelmingly in favor of B2B. And there haven't been enough companies looking at solutions like this or providing solutions like this. And I think there is unmet demand for legal services that is not currently being served by the traditional legal services sector. There are people who are looking for legal help but aren't looking to pay hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars an hour for a lawyer. And the reality is there should be some alternative to serving that. And technology, and especially technology we have now, plays a large part in potentially doing that. The way we see it is that there is an option to provide a service like this, either at a small cost to the consumer, or we're also exploring other ways to potentially monetize this. My dream would be to be able to monetize this in a way that doesn't charge the end users because social good is at the center of what we're doing here. But I believe there is an option to serve some of the demand that something like middle class or any families who are looking to get help but maybe can't afford the hundreds of pounds that a lawyer would cost. And making money off of tech like this isn't necessarily the primary motive of companies that are in the space. It's certainly not our primary motivation, but there is an avenue to serve unmet demand that people have for legal services. And the reality is people are willing to pay for legal help. They don't want to pay the rates of lawyers, but systems like this provide a nice middle ground for people who are looking for something in between.
Thanks, Mike. It's really interesting and really wish you luck on taking this to the next level. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard.